The UCAT exam is often seen as the bane of med school applicants. With recent disruptions to GCSEs and A-level exams, the UCAT exam is more important than ever this year. Hi, I'm Arisma, a medical student at King's, and in today's video, we've spoken to TAM's top tutors and asked them for their top tips for the UCAT exam. If you haven't already, make sure to smash that subscribe button because we post weekly free YouTube videos to help you ace your med school application. So let's get into it.
My first top tip is to utilise the free question banks available online. So the gold standard would be the UCAT official website, as well as Past Medicine. They've got over 3,000 free questions that you can utilise that perfectly mimic the exam format, particularly the calculator. And that's something that you really need to get used to utilising. So practicing it digitally, not in terms of practicing it written, practicing it in terms of computer in the same format that you're going to have the exam. You need to practice how you're going to have the exam to ultimately produce the best results that you can.
When you're revising for your UCAT, I think it's really important to do it under time conditions. It may be permissible to be doing the questions without time pressure when you're just learning the question formats at the very beginning of your revision. However, when you're getting close to that exam date and things are really starting to get to the tail end, it's important that you're doing time conditioned tests to make sure that when you get into the real thing, you're working at a pace that is suitable for the number of questions and the time that you've got.
A really underrated tip is actually to have a really good support network. So that's in terms of family and friends. If there's anything on your mind, get it off your chest, especially any of your concerns, any of your worries, and particularly speaking to peers who are also going through that process can be really useful. It can actually be quite reassuring to know that other people who are in the same boat as you are actually having the same quite natural feelings that you're having as well. And if you don't have anyone, from your school or friends that are going into medicine, and even if you do, be sure to join our WhatsApp group. It's a community group, it's absolutely free, and you can join other aspiring medics from across the UK and internationally. We'll give you free tips, free information, so why wouldn't you go for it? Links down in the description below.
The single most useful tip that helped me perform better in my UCAT exam was to make note of my mistakes and then go through them later on. So anytime I would make a mistake when I was doing mocks or practicing questions or anything like that, I would make note of it. I would understand why I made the mistake. So was it a case of I didn't understand the concept, or was it a case of I didn't have enough time to go through the question? Either way, I would make note of the mistake, and then the day before the exam, I would go through all the list of mistakes that I made. Now, this strategy especially helped me in the abstract reasoning section, where if I couldn't identify a pattern in any of the sets, I would make note of that pattern. And going through a list of around 50 patterns that I found difficult to identify the morning of my exam meant that I was in that headspace to identify patterns easily. When I was preparing for my UCAT exam, I was scoring in the 500s and 600s in the abstract reasoning section. In the end, with this strategy alone, I was able to score an 830 in the abstract reasoning section, and in fact, it was my best section. So I would highly recommend making a list of your mistakes and going through them periodically, especially the night before or the morning of your exam.
A top tip for the UCAT that we all probably know, but perhaps choose to willingly ignore, is the fact that we should be focusing on our weakest section. Every student is going to very quickly realise that they have a favourite section that they love doing, and their weaker section in which they consistently score the lowest. And after a long day, it can be very tempting to revert to your stronger section rather than working on what will actually yield the highest gains. So you should be able to identify what your weaker section is based off its lowest score, but you also need to consider why you are scoring low. So for example, is it because you have poor timekeeping? Is it because you're allowing yourself to get stuck on a question for too long? Is it because your mental arithmetic isn't as sharp as you'd like it to be? There can be many reasons, and especially if you're scoring inconsistently in a section. So if one time you're getting a very high score and another time you're getting a slightly lower score, what is causing those discrepancies? Because very often it's a case of getting stuck on a question, and that can lead to a poor score.
Some of my top tips for UCAT writing are to focus on consistency. By focusing on consistency, you don't feel super overwhelmed by the end of it, and you also build up a bit by bit. It's much easier to focus on your timings when you're more consistent with it because you get used to it. And it's also much easier to focus on getting better with those timings as well.
Scheduling for the UCAT can be quite a daunting task because you have several sections to prepare for, while at the same time factoring in for all your other commitments during the summer. As a result, it can be useful to have some sort of plan drawn up. And the extent of this will vary from person to person. So some people find it very useful to have an hour by hour plan drawn up where they know exactly what part of each section they're doing at any given time, while other people prefer to plan more vaguely, perhaps just by assigning what section they'll be doing on any given day. Either way, find what works for you, but make sure to also schedule in some time for free time activities and doing what you want, because this will help you feel more relaxed and prevent burnout. At the same time, you also need to be scheduling in for sufficient sleep, because not only once again is this going to help with your well-being, it's also going to help you memorize the content that you've learned during the day and therefore also improve your exam performance.
A really good tip that I use all the time for exam preparation is accountability. So holding myself accountable also by telling others, and therefore them holding myself accountable too. And the way that I do this is by telling my friends, my family, that I'm going to do X past paper today, and I'm going to do it, by 2 p.m, and then I'm going to be able to have lunch with you, and actually holding myself to that, creating a timetable that you're going to look forward to, and then actually having something that you have to do that past paper by, and actually getting them to ask you, okay, did you do it, to hold yourself account. That's a really good way just to make sure that you're going to stay disciplined and stay consistent, because ultimately it is that consistency that's going to add up. It is going to be those cumulative gains over a series of weeks that's going to make the difference and hopefully give you the best UCAT result that you deserve.
My second top tip would be to optimize your environment towards taking the UCAT test. The UCAT is something that's in a very silent environment with no breaks, and you won't have your cell phone calculator as well to help you with the quantitative reasoning section. I would recommend that closer to the exam date, you would be using only timed exams. You wouldn't be able to use your phone calculator if you do use it for help. And you optimize your environment by making sure you're studying in a quiet area and you don't take breaks between blocks.
I'd really strongly encourage students to look over the Good Medical Practice, which is a document put together by the General Medical Council, or the GMC for short. And this really outlines all of the values and principles that a doctor should stick to when they are practicing medicine in their day-to-day life. Whilst it is strictly relevant to doctors and medical students, it is still relevant to those applying, because it really helps with the situational judgment area of the UCAT, and even it helps with the writing of your personal statement.
Our biggest tip at TAM will always be to practice, practice, practice. The UCAT is not a difficult exam in itself. What makes it difficult is the time pressure, and the only way you can improve your speed of answering questions is if you practice. Additionally, the only way you're going to familiarize yourself with the different types of questions, with the strategies to implement for these questions, is through practice. Remember that this is an aptitude test, not a content-based test. So there's no actual content to learn. There's no actual studying involved. Instead, the only thing that you should be focusing all of your energy on is practicing as many questions as possible.
I think something that I wish I'd been told the day before or even the day of my UCAT is that you are good enough, you are smart enough, and it will go well. Because once you reach that day, you've done all the prep, you know exactly what's going to come up in terms of the format, in terms of the difficulty. You just need to go in there, give it your all, and what happens, happens. At the end of the day, you are bright enough, and getting into medical school is just around the corner.
Thank you so much for watching, and we hope you found this video useful. Once again, make sure to hit that subscribe button and check out all the other amazing videos on this channel, including our UCAT playlist, which includes section-specific tips and walkthrough videos. If you'd like to find out more, you can always head over to the Aspiring Medics website, link in the description box below. See you in the next one.